Good evening, everyone. Yeah, basically today we want to talk about question tag. And you believe with me that basically in the English language, it is either we are making a statement or we are making requests such that an answer can be given to us. So if we know that there is something called question tag, or let's say there is something called a tag, it will mean that there is something attached. A tag, or pardon me, will mean something attached to a thing, either to give a description about that thing or to tell us more about that thing. So today, question tag, in a way to define it in correlation to what we're discussing, will mean that a question attached to a statement given or expressed in the English language. A question tag is a question attached to a statement expressed or given in English language. Though there are several rules that we can consider when it comes to question tag, but tonight we'll be discussing 3 out of these rules. And these 3 rules will guide us to know how we should create our tag when a statement is made. So quickly, without wasting our time, I would like to share the rules with us. These rules, as we have them, they signify that when we have anything of such in the English language, or if we have any statements whatsoever in the English language, we know how to attend to them and how to bring them to work or to notes if we are to add a question tag to them. Now, there are several types of sentences in the English language. We may have a simple sentence, we may have a complex sentence, we may have a compound sentence. So as much as we have this, each of these statements differ by their composition. And in our past classes, we have talked about the types of verbs that we have. We talked about the forms of verbs and the types of verbs that we have. So basically, without time, I will just share my screen with us so that we can understand what I have been trying to say. So I will share my screen now. Yes, I believe we all can see the screen. Thank you very much. Now, so this is it. In grammar, we said a question tag is a very short clause. I want us to underline the word clause. Not a phrase, not a word. It is a clause. And a clause is any composition that has a finite verb in it. I think in one of our classes, I have told us that what differentiates a phrase from a clause is that in a phrase, there is no finite verb, but in a clause, there is a finite verb. So we are saying that in grammar or English grammar, a question tag is a very short clause at the end of the statement, which changes the statement into a question. So which means that a statement that is given or a statement that is expressed will change to a question when a question tag has been added to it. So, but note that the question tag you are adding to it is a very short clause, such that when you add it to it, it changes the expressed statement or the given statement into a question. And as soon as the question comes, it requires an answer afterwards. Now note, when the question comes, the answer that will come afterwards will raise a polar question, either a yes or no answer. So basically in English grammar, when we talk about polar questions. Polar questions are type of questions that will expect a yes or no answer. For instance, if someone has eaten and I ask the person, have you eaten? The person can just give me the answer, yes. Now, the person may want to go further, trying to add more to it, but basically to give me a short answer, the person can just say yes, and then I get what the person is saying. So without wasting our time on that, we'll go into the rules quickly. Rules for forming question tag. Rules for forming question tag. Here now, we're going to discuss each of these rules, and then we'll try to add sentences to them to know how each of them works. Now, the first rule, which states that the subject in the statement matches the subject in the tag. The subject in the statement matches the subject in the tag. Now, before I explain this first rule in details, I'll give us an example of a statement, and then we identify subjects in the sentence. For instance, he is coming home. That would be our sentence. He is coming home. So now, in this sentence as given, this sentence as we have here has a subject, an auxiliary verb, a main verb, and an object. So now, he here is our subject. This is our auxiliary verb. This is our main verb. And this is our object. So when the rule stated that the subject in the statement matches the subject in the tag. So which means if we go by our definition, the short clause that will be added to such a sentence must include these highlighted subjects as part or as the subject in the tag. Now let's proceed. I will still come back to this first rule for us to understand better when I explain the second rule. Now, the second rule states that the auxiliary verb or the verb to be in the statement matches the verb used in the tag. The auxiliary verb in the statement or the verb to be in the statement matches the verb to be in the tag. Now, if I bring these statements down into this second row, my auxiliary verb is what I have underlined here. So which means the auxiliary verb that I have here for this second rule will be is. So which means if I am going to form my question tag, I must consider my auxiliary verb and not my main verb. Remember, the first rule stated that you use your subject as used in the expression in the tag. Now, the second rule says that you bring in the auxiliary verb, note that, or the verb to be in the statement to match the verb used in the tag. So which means if you're going to form a question tag, you use the auxiliary verb that you have in your statement or in the sentence given. Now, going from there into the third rule. The third rule states that if the statement is positive, the tag is usually negative, and vice versa. If the statement is positive, the tag is usually negative. Now, here, how do we identify a positive statement and a negative statement? Now, a positive statement is a statement that does not have the word not in its composition. This word not is not found in its composition. So any statement you have written that this word is not there, or you don't have a word as never or not ever, or anything that has to do with negativity, will say that the statement or the expression is positive. But if you have a statement that has any of this in it, will say the statement is negative. So which means if I have a statement as he is coming home, this is a positive statement. But if I have something like he is not coming home, this would be a negative statement. This would be a negative statement. So I believe we can see the differences now. So if we are to go by this rule stated here, that says that if the statement is positive, the tag is usually negative, and vice versa. Now, the vice versa there means that if the statement is positive, the tag will be negative. And again, let me reiterate on it. If the statement is positive, that is, if I give a statement as the highlighted, which is a positive statement, the tag will be negative. So it means the tag we have not in its composition. But if the statement is negative as the one highlighted, it means the tag will be positive. That is, the question tag I'll be using for it will not have not in it. Now, having understood what each of these rules mean, let us now form a question tag from some sentences. So now I'm going to start here. I'm going to start with the first sentence I gave to us. It states, he is coming home. He is coming home. Note that after your statements, and you have the intention of adding a question tag to it, you put a comma for continuity. Now, the first rule states that the subject in our sentence or our statement must match the subject in our tag. So which means this is our first consideration. Now, the second rule states that the verb to be or the auxiliary verb used in this statement is the same auxiliary verb that you use, is the same verb you use in your question tag. The auxiliary verb or the auxiliary verb to be that you use in your statement is the same that you use in your question tag. Now, so which means this as our auxiliary verb is what we will consider when having a question tag. And the third rule states that if the statement is positive, the question tag must be negative or usually negative. So now, if we combine all of this together, this is how you arrange your question tag in this form. You have your auxiliary verb plus your negative marker if we must have one at all. Plus your subject. Now, if I want to form a question tag for a positive statement, what I have is this. For a positive meant, the question tag is formed auxiliary verb plus not plus subject, and then my question mark. That is how a question tag for a positive statement is formed. So if I'm going to apply this formation into the sentence we have above, so this is what I'm going to be having. I'm going to be having this, and then my tag will be bringing my auxiliary verb is plus not plus E, which is my subject, and then I have my question mark. Now, because in English language, for things like this, we need contraction. So what we're going to be having for this will be, to better simplify it, I'm going to be having, removing this. I remove this, I replace with this, and then I have this. So this will be my question tag. So for the statement, he is coming home. For the statement, he is coming home, which is a positive statement, it will have a tag, isn't he, which is a negative question tag. The statement is a positive statement, and according to our third rule here, it says that if the statement is positive, the tag is usually negative. And so from here, we have been able to fulfill the first, the second, and the third rule. The first rule, going back to it, states that the subject in the statement matches the subject in the tag. That has been achieved here. This is our subject in the statement, and this is our subject in the question tag, matching. So which means the first rule has been obeyed. The second rule, which states that the auxiliary verb or the verb to be in the statement matches the verb used in the tag. What we have here has also answered to that, because the auxiliary verb we have in here matches the verb, the only verb that we have in the tag. So it means the second rule has also been applied. Now, if we move on from here and we want to form a negative, we want to form a question tag for a negative statement. So I'll just borrow something from here. He is not coming home as my negative statement. He is not coming home as my negative statement. So remember, I said if you're going to have a question tag for any statement, put a comma after your statement. So moving up from there, or moving forward from there, he is not coming. According to our third rule, it says if we have a negative statement, we must have a positive question tag. So which means our positive question tag will not have not in its formation. But the first rule and the second rule must be applied. So the first rule being applied means this is our subject. This is our subject. So that is what we'll consider as the subject that we used in the tag. And this is our auxiliary verb, the auxiliary verb that will be used as the only verb in the tag. So for us to form the tag now, so it will be is. What we'll be having is the auxiliary verb plus the subject and our question mark. So if we're going to be forming a question tag for this sentence, so because it is a negative sentence, the auxiliary verb plus the subject, so it means we'll be having is E as our tag. So that is how the question tag will be formed for a negative statement. So with this that we have done now, we've been able to form a question tag going by the rules and following the rules from the first letter to the last letter. Remember, the first rule states that the subject in the statement matches the subject in the tag. The second one states that the auxiliary verb in the verb or the verb to be in the statement matches the verb in the tag. And the third one says that if the statement is positive, the tag is usually negative. Now, going further on the second rule. Now, the highlighted auxiliary verb here means that we may not only have the verb to be in a sentence as the auxiliary. Remember, we have three non-modal or the primary auxiliaries in the English language. We have the verb to be, we have the verb to do, and we have the verb to have. So what this is trying to say is that if you use any of these verbs, any of these auxiliary verbs in a sentence or in a statement, they will represent the verb that you use in the tag if you must attach a question tag to such statements. So for instance, if I have a question as this, he has been there. If I have a statement as such, he has been there. Now, if I'm going to follow the rule, he is my subject, as is my auxiliary verb, being is used as my main verb here, and this is my object. So now, because this is a positive statement, the consideration will be that I change my tag to form a negative question. So it will be hasn't he, that will be my question tag. Hasn't he? But if the statement is written thus, he has not been there, my tag will be as he, to follow the rules that we are being given. So because of our time, I'll just rush through what we have done in some minutes past so that I can give us our assignment and then we can work on with that. So don't forget, the rule states that the subjects in the statement must be the subjects in the tag. The auxiliary verb you have used in the statement is the only verb that you use in the statement, sorry, in the tag. And then the third rule states that if your statement is positive, the tag will be negative. And if your statement is negative, the tag will be positive. So pay attention to that and use that when you are forming your question tag for any statement you are given. So for our assignments, these are the questions that we're going to be working on. So let me change these to assignments. The first statement is, he has read this book. The second statement is, reading the book. The third statement will be, he will read the book. The fourth one is, he should read the book. The fifth one is, he cannot read the book. And the last one will be, he would read the book. He would read the book. Okay, let me put that straight. He wrote this book, pardon me. So these are what you work with when you are having your assignment. So go with the rules that we have used and apply each of those rules, forming your question tag for each of the statements that we are being given as an assignment. So please make sure you apply all these rules and all that we have been discussing, apply them in your day-to-day conversations. I have told us in the past class that the best way for us to get these things internalized in us is when we employ them in our day-to-day conversations. English is better understood if you put it to use. I have said it also that English is just like mathematics. You must apply the rules you're given so that you can understand it better and then you get better in it. So thank you for your time. Have a wonderful evening.